On September 10th, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was shot and killed in Utah at one of his popular college campus events. He leaves behind a wife, two very young children, and quite a significant legacy for a 31-year-old. On a personal note, I wasn't some big fan of his, but I was certainly aware of who he was, and I had seen some of his work, such as his dialogue with Michael Knowles on Catholicism versus Protestantism. And even as a Catholic, I have to admit that Charlie Kirk did a good job, and I think he had the upper hand in the discussion, though Trent Horn had a strong response to Kirk in a later video. Charlie's death was quite a shock, probably as surprising a celebrity death as I've ever personally encountered, along with perhaps the death of Kobe Bryant. I was at work when I took a peek at YouTube and saw people saying on community posts to pray for Charlie Kirk, so I went straight to X and it was all over the TL. It wasn't long before I saw the unedited, uncensored video of the moment he was shot. It felt like you could see his soul leaving his body the instant it happened, a haunting moment. And, I'm not a guy who's encountered much blood and gore in real life. I'm not a hunter or nothing like that, so I guess I was a little bit ignorant of the horrifying nature of such a shooting. The amount of blood instantly poured from the wound was just such a shocking, terrible sight. It was impossible for me to believe he would make it after that, even if it had happened on the operating table. So those were images that I won't soon forget. But back to the topic. In the wake of Kirk's murder, many people feel like this should cause a mini revolution of sorts. And to be sure, I think it is causing ambivalent conservatives to think more seriously about the need to stand against far leftist extremism. I've seen some posts from people saying they're going to church for the first time in many years, inspired by Kirk's deep Christianity. But I think the group that this assassination might have the biggest impact on is the ambivalent left. I'm talking about people who tend to vote Democrat, but maybe not enthusiastically so. People who want to see gays have the right to marry, and who largely affirm trans people, while maybe not being the craziest fans of LGBT. You wouldn't find them wearing rainbow paraphernalia or putting a trans flag in their yard, for example. They are pro-worker but wouldn't feel comfortable identifying as socialists. And even though they really don't like Trump or his supporters, they wouldn't, at least enthusiastically, be declaring that they hate Trump. You could call them solid but hesitant Democrats. They definitely feel at least some pressure to be Democrats. Maybe it's from family, maybe it's from the fear of being considered racist or homophobic if they don't support leftist causes. Long story short, I'd say they're the 10 to 15% of normie Democrats who are the least happy, the least content with being Democrats. I know people like this. I'm sure you might too. I would say that I was in that camp 3 to 5 years ago. And now the question for people like this is pretty simple. Where do you go from here? We saw a few important things happen with this particular assassination, and I think it results in a trilemma facing these ambivalent leftists. So first, let's give the assassination some further context. Charlie Kirk was a relatively moderate conservative commentator by most standards. I think we can all agree that he's no Nick Fuentes or Cory Mauler. I wouldn't even say he was as far right as a guy like Tucker Carlson or Matt Walsh. To be clear, I'm not going so far as to call him center-right, as some people have been saying. I would say he was firmly right-wing. I definitely wouldn't put him in, the Joe Rogan camp. I'm just saying that he isn't as far right as many other conservative pundits are. So you should be skeptical of anyone who is labeling him as ultra-right or an extremist. But the thing that Kirk did that helped make him famous was that he would have conversations with people, debates, dialogues. He would go onto college campuses frequently and would give students or whoever else wanted an opportunity to come up to the mic and discuss their beliefs or criticize and challenge his beliefs, sparking a conversation between them. Now, you may detest some or much of what Kirk believed, but I have a feeling that almost anyone would admit that the conversations are a good thing. Heck, they give Democrats or leftists a chance to disprove Kirk and make their side look better than his. It is also a sign of a healthy society to have people dialoguing about their political disagreements. It shows that no system, no ideology is above questioning or debating. And it gives the public a chance to see where the clash truly lies between two ideologies, allowing them to do more research on those points and come to their own conclusions. It's a marketplace of ideas, as some call it. So these dialogues have clear positives, but it was during one of these events that Kirk lost his life. And when Kirk was shot, what did the reaction look like? Well, it depends on where you look. Obviously, right-wing commentators and politicians on both sides of the aisle expressed their condolences and deep regret that political violence had taken place. We must point out that a number of high-profile Democrats, like Gavin Newsom, Bernie Sanders, and others, condemned the political violence. But if you look at the reaction of many far leftists, as well as other groups like Muslims, the reaction looked very different. There was celebration and cheering and gloating all over social media, and there still is. If you were online, you all saw it, posts cheering and saying that he deserved it. On X, there were multiple posts making fun of his death with over 500,000 likes. It wasn't just a little fringe group. But it didn't stop there. It wasn't just an online phenomenon. TMZ had cheers on the air when the announcement was coming up that Kirk had been shot. Many people were interviewed who were cheering or suggesting that this was a good thing. There was video of one man who was even cheering on the shooting at the event itself in Utah. Reactions like these were truly surprising and disgusting, and it was not just a fringe group. So let's piece this all together. A conservative, though not one of the most extreme variety, who regularly engages in respectful dialogues with opponents, was killed, and it inspired tons of insane and frankly satanic responses. If you ask me, it was pretty shocking. But I'm not curious about my own opinion. I'm curious about what the hesitant Democrat will think and ultimately do about this. Getting back to the trilemma, I think there are three major options on the table for the ambivalent leftist to respond to what happened. The first is lie, to be dishonest about it. This might take the form of simply ignoring what happened and what the reactions were, pretending like you didn't see any of these horrible reactions, or pretending that this is just a tiny fringe that we don't even need to worry about. But we have clearly seen that these responses are widespread, that we're talking hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, and that it isn't merely an online phenomenon. There's no excuse to be ignorant. You can't just hide from having a view on these things when confronted with them. You are either with the people cheering for his death, or you are against them. I don't believe that in this case, a third way can apply. The second option, of course, is lunatic. Unfortunately, far too many far leftists are going with this option. These people would say, fine, I do have an opinion. This was based. I'm glad that it happened. He got what was coming. All those types of evil reactions. Or even people who maybe aren't celebrating it, but they'll happily make jokes about his death, or they'll make it clear that they don't care that he died and that they don't feel bad for his family, or they'll try to justify the shooting. Now, within this second option, the most common way of providing a post hoc justification is by making a comparison to other cases. Ultimately, we all intuitively know that it's evil for an innocent person to be murdered. So most will try to reject that he is innocent. They might say something like, was it evil for the Jews to be happy when Hitler died? Or the Cambodians when Pol Pot died? Or Eastern Europeans when Stalin died? The appeal is that, well, since there are some cases where this reaction would seem reasonable, it follows that their reaction to Kirk's death is reasonable too, because they'll claim Kirk was some evil fascist bigot, or something like that. Now, there are serious problems with this reaction. The obvious one is that comparing a political commentator with views you despise to a person who is actually responsible for the deaths of many people is just an absurd comparison. I increasingly find the comparisons between Trump and Hitler to be silly and reckless, a contributing factor towards people who encourage, or at least would be opposed to political violence. But how much worse when Kirk isn't even a politician? And as I've said already, he was rather tame compared to some of the guys out there. Calling him an extremist is silly. And he also regularly allowed his beliefs to be challenged through these campus events, as well as other debates. That's not the mark of a fascist. But instead of trying to attack Kirk's views and expose where there might be shortcomings in them, the killer decided to attack the man instead, and many people cheered it on. Another thing I will say is that no matter the circumstances, we should actually never be delighting in the death of any human being, even if we believe it's for the greater good. If Kim Jong-un was overthrown and assassinated tomorrow, we would recognize that that could be for the best for the people of North Korea, but it would still be wrong to delight in the fact that he was killed. We should hope for repentance from all people who work evil, and when their life is cut short before there was a clear opportunity for repentance, we have reason to worry about the eternal state of their soul. But intuitively, I think we are all capable of recognizing that being directly responsible for the deaths of innocent people versus someone having political views we don't like is like comparing a mountain to a molehill. So this second option of lunacy is as unjustifiable as it is wicked. Now, those are two routes a hesitant Democrat could take, but there is one more in the trilemma: leaving, abandoning the left as it stands because it is clashing with their ideas of human dignity and respect for people who disagree with each other. People who choose this third option can clearly see violence being fueled online by far-left propaganda, like calling MAGAs or Republicans Nazis, or the examples of posts that I included in this short on the Minneapolis school shooting that happened a few weeks ago, which I truly believe social media could have been a part of. People who choose this third option of the trilemma can see these popular posts with tons of likes, glorifying violence and applauding it. And it's easy for them to imagine that out of the 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 or 500,000 people who are regularly liking this type of content, there's got to be at least a half dozen of them who genuinely think this is something that they could take into their own hands because they believe that they are victims and that violence is the only viable option for them. People in this third camp can also clearly see the massive display of hate and vitriol coming from some of their fellow leftists, celebrating this death of a young father, making jokes about it. This is not normal behavior for the average person, but for far, far too many on that side, it's business as usual. And Charlie Kirk is not the first example of this. The truth is, belief in political violence and an assassination culture is a growing trend, as studies have shown, and it needs to be addressed now. So what would this third option look like in practice? Well, when I say leave, I mean leave behind this toxic leftist rhetoric and those who support it. I'm not saying that these people will drop everything and become MAGAs just because this happened. Heck, I'm not MAGA even after this happened. The criticisms I have of certain ideologies don't disappear just because of a tragedy. But what I am thinking for putting this third option into practice is that it might be as simple as blocking people you aren't that close to who are celebrating this assassination, or sharply correcting people who you are close to who are doing this. If you are hesitant to even take that step, ask yourself why. Is it because you are concerned that the responses will accuse you of being a Republican or a Trump supporter just for displaying basic human decency? Then I would contend you might not be with the right crowd. If someone would criticize or attack you or call you MAGA for doing something as simple as calling out celebrations of Kirk's death, the simple response is, no, I'm not MAGA or a Republican. I'm a human with sympathy, and unlike you, I reject that this is a quality only Republicans can have. But seriously, If you think you'll incur condemnation or contempt for calling people out within your political in-group, you've got some things to contemplate. It may come to a point where you feel disillusioned with the left because of stuff like this, and you instead move to a more independent approach to politics. That's what happened with me a few years back, and part of it, though certainly not all, was because of this type of behavior we see from far leftists, both online and in real life. And guess what? You don't have to give up things you care about to do something like that. I still believe that we need stronger gun laws in this country, that we need to hold businesses accountable that aren't being good stewards of our environment, and that we need better public healthcare systems, because I think the private sector is far too often predatory. I am also sharply critical of Israel and of certain U.S. policies regarding the treatment of both legal and illegal immigrants within our borders. But in spite of this, I reject identifying with the left. Of course, part of that is because of my views on abortion, that I'm strongly pro-life, which is anathema to the modern left. But also part of it is that the behavior of many far leftists is so repulsive that I can no longer comfortably identify with it, even if I was more left-wing on all issues. So just as C.S. Lewis had the trilemma, either Jesus was a liar, a lunatic, or Lord, but he wasn't just some nice teacher, I believe a similar trilemma faces the modern, just some nice leftist, who is ambivalent and willing to listen to what both sides have to say. I think it's been made very clear, the far left does not respect people who dissent on their side. Look at what they are saying about Dean Withers right now. Now, Dean Withers is a Gen Z political commentator. But is he a far-right groyper? Is he right-wing at all? Is he a centrist? Is he moderate left? No, he is a full-blown leftist. Very much on the left on every issue, and he's debated many right-wingers. But he is being viciously attacked by a lot of people on the far left right now. And what was his crime? Well, it was that he showed sympathy for Kirk and his family and had an emotional response to finding out about Kirk's death. That was it. And the responses were mercilessly attacking him, to the point where he actually uploaded another video defending his initial reaction. And here were some of the responses to that one. These people on the far left despise you if you disagree with them on anything. They see you as on the same team as the MAGAs and far right, just for having a different view on a minor point. It almost seems that for many of them, your human dignity is conditional on how much you submit to the ideology. Does that sound like a world you want? If you don't even feel comfortable stating your beliefs because you're afraid of what your own side will say about it, something needs to change. Maybe it's condemning and blocking those people out there who are celebrating this terrible act. Maybe it's distancing yourself from these people and making it clear that even if you do still consider yourself a leftist, you are not in political communion with them. That might cause some of this insane far leftist movement to die out. Or maybe it will be leaving leftism altogether because of how deeply saturated this type of mentality is, and choosing to become politically independent. Whatever you do, I believe that pretending that this doesn't exist or isn't a problem is no longer a valid option. Charlie Kirk's assassination has brought it to the forefront, and now is the time to take action.